Well, here we are, 1,000 subscribers. I'd like to thank everyone who is subscribed and is watching and has been here for the journey. I can't stress it enough. So now I'll give a bit of context behind the topic of this video and my backstory on how I became interested in indigenous history. My dad's family is from the western part of the Estado de Mexico, which coincidentally was on the borders between the Aztec and Purepecha empires, and I heard a lot of stories from them about all the incredible items they've found on their land, going back to my great-grandfather, and they still find to this day. From obsidian blades the size of their forearms, a stone with a supposed quote-unquote Aztec calendar carved or painted on it. The most notable one that started it all for me was a molcajete that my dad found as a kid when he was digging a post hole over 30 years ago. And also my cousin, who I'd like to say took it upon himself to preserve this history and save it from getting destroyed by the plow and elements, gifted me some of his findings, which I will show in the film to illustrate the complexity of the Aztec Purepecha borderlands. These anecdotes and experiences, as well as being able to hold history in my hands, made me want to learn more and answer the questions I had about the peoples who lived there, the peoples who lived where I live, California, and who came before them, which leads to me wanting to share this knowledge in video format online. I have done research for years on this part of Mexico and what I've found is surprising. And now, History of Aztlan presents the 1K subscriber special, the evidence of the Aztec Purepecha wars from its frontiers. Before the Aztecs and Purepecha dominated what is now the western part of the Estado de Mexico and the Toluca Valley, there were the Toltecs. What evidence do we have of them in this area? In the cave paintings near Santo Tomás de los Plátanos, which will be mentioned in more detail later in the video, show a prominent figure like a warrior with his chimali or shield and maybe a spear thrower. But what I noticed when looking deeper into what he was wearing, he has a butterfly gorget like those of the Atlantis of Tula, which is said to have been the capital of the Toltec. Although this site is associated with the Aztecs and Purepecha, why is there a warrior with a Toltec breastplate amongst later Aztec gods? Could it be the Aztecs saw this warrior and decided to add their own motifs to this already ancient site? After the collapse of Toltec hegemony, Otomangan peoples from what is believed to be modern-day Guanajuato arrived into the Valley of Toluca in the 11th century AD. They would become the Matlatzinca, Majawa, and Otomi that still live there in communities today. The Matlatzinca, who call themselves Nenetambatis, or the people of the valley, are very important to this story. Their nomadic ancestors chose the Toltec settlement as their capital. Although their name for it was lost, the Aztecs called it Calixtlahuacan, the house on the plains. Archaeological research has uncovered Turkey glyphs around the site, which has led them to speculate that Calixtlahuacan may have had a name related to turkeys. From their capital, they dominated the peoples of the Toluca Valley and a little further beyond. While this happened, a Chichimeca tribe who had changed their name from Azteca to Mexica built a capital in Lake Texcoco and had now established themselves in the political intrigue amongst the city-states of the Valley of Mexico. While a couple hundred miles away in Lake Pátzcuaro, Michoacán, an alliance of Purepecha and Chichimecas coalesced to become the hegemons of the region. The Matlatzinca prospered due to the trade routes of grain and obsidian through their lands. The mid-1400s in central Mexico saw the centralization and expansion of two powerful empires, with the Matlatzinca finding themselves lodged between two powerful states, both vying for influence over the strategic Toluca Valley. Three factions arose. One was pro-Purepecha, the other was pro-Aztec, while the last was for being independent from both empires that were at their doorstep. The intrigue will culminate with the invasion of the Valley of Toluca by the Aztecs in 1474, led by their Tlatoani, Axayacatl, leaving him crippled for the rest of his life. The Aztecs destroyed the original capital of the Matlatzinca and rebuilt it as Calixtlahuacan, while moving their administrative capital of the region to an Altepetl named Tolocan, which would become the modern-day city of Toluca. They now control the Valley of Toluca, up to what coincides now with the modern western border of the Estado de Mexico. Axayacatl was not done with conquering, however. His mentor, the great general Tlacalel, had warned him not to get involved with those of Michoacán, i.e. the Purepecha. 1475 saw a revolt by the Matlatzinca against their Aztec overlords. It was violently put down, and in this case, many refugees were given asylum by the Purepecha. I'd love to go further into detail about this in a future film, dedicated solely to the subject. So to summarize, Axayacatl's army was defeated, and the border regions became heavily fortified up until the conquest of the Aztecs by the Spanish. And this is where my analysis on these items my family found begins. It may have been a calpuli, that's main item of export as tribute to the Lord in Toluca, was obsidian lithics such as arrowheads and blades. What is surprising about these pieces, however, is that they are made of a grayish obsidian, not the greenish type from Aztec-controlled areas. This type of obsidian could only have come from Ucareo, deep in modern-day Michoacan, that would have been Purepecha territory. This obsidian was also found in digs at Calixtlahuacan, alongside obsidian from Aztec-controlled sources. Unfortunately, I have not found any sources that could possibly date these lithics found at the site. Therefore, how did I reach my hypothesis that the obsidian was made post-1476 and post-conquest by the Aztecs and not before? This is because many grinding stones, including the scoria molcajete my dad found and the sometates my uncle found, are present. What is lacking in the pre-1476 pre-Aztec Calixtlahuacan archaeological record? The answer is stone grinding tools like metates and molcajetes. The theory by archaeologists is that they use pottery incised at the bottom to make salsas, and their diet may have primarily consisted of tamales. Therefore, it brings up an interesting question of how obsidian sourced from the heart of Purepecha territory and was made in lands that were controlled by the Aztecs. Could it be the obsidian was stored and then used much more later, as it was in demand by the Aztecs? It is important to note that most of the obsidian is in the form of blades and prismatic cores, mass-produced arrowheads, which indicate they were stockpiling lithics to prepare for any conflict that may come over the hills, a sort of Cold War occurring in the region. More evidence of the Aztec and Purepecha conflicts may probably be seen in the aforementioned cave paintings in the site near Santo Tomas de los Plátanos. 2, maybe 3 different styles can be seen at this site. Besides the Toltec Atlantean type figure, there are classic gods such as Huehueteotl, Old Man Fire, and Donatillo, the sun god, with an amazing sun disk, very worn but still can be seen. Yet beside the pantheon of gods painted by the Aztecs, there is a far more cruder, stylistic-like figures. The website that mentions these paintings says that the Toltecs, Aztecs, and Purepecha created these. I always associated these more simple figures with the Purepecha. Maybe these paintings served as some sort of quote-unquote tag by warriors trying to show off that everything in the distance, it's on the side of a huge canyon, belonged to them. We may never know their motives. Yet putting all these clues together, we have a picture of how the borders between the Aztecs and Purepecha looked like and what was happening in them. It seems like a sort of testament to the scale of their conflict that 500 years later, objects are still being found that could be attributed to this period of Mesoamerican history and the complexity of politics in this area.